Don't know which smartphone gimbal to buy? Well, in front of you are what I think currently are the most popular smartphone gimbals that's available. Some are new, some are old, and some just came out. And today I'm going to give you an absolute honest comparison between these four. Like always, this is an honest, unbiased, unsponsored review. I bought this myself, so feel free to see all the benefits and the negativities. Like always, we're going to go through each of the gimbals, the designs, the functionalities, the AI capabilities, its tracking, as well as outside real tests. And if this is the first time you've joined my channel, my name is George. Here we let the tech do the talking. Let's go. Now, you can purchase any of these gimbals on its own, or you can purchase the upgraded combo version, which what I have here. So what do you get in the combo? For the M6, it comes in one of these carry cases. Inside, you're able to fit all your gimbal accessories, as well as some other ports for wires and cables. If you do buy the combo with the AI pack, you do get one of these. This is a LED light as well as a LiDAR sensor for AI tracking. It's also magnetic, so you can mount this straight onto your gimbal just like this. The DJI Osmo Mobile 6, well, basically you get the gimbal, but you do get an accessory, which is a LED clamp for your phone. Now this is the original if you have it standard pack, and this is the larger, you can see the LED pack. Now the bigger base is obviously the battery itself, and then you charge it through a USB port. The power button's on the back, so all you have to do is press and it will light up in 3 different increments. And of course, you can change the Kelvin temperature from warm to neutral to something cool. By the way, this is not cheap from where I am. This is 1/3 of the gimbal itself. And later we will test the light between these gimbals to see if it's just bright enough or it's just a gimmick. Next, just Zhiyun Smooth 5S. Now, what you get in the combo pack, you get a carry case, very similar to the M6, but this is more of a fabric finish. And inside, obviously, you can put all your accessories, your cables, as well as pouches for other things that you need. If you do get the combo version, you get an additional LED as well as an AI tracking. This is modular. As you can see, you can put it on the top or the bottom, and it automatically charges both the accessories. So you can have up to 3 LED lights or have one replaced with an AI track. Lastly, we have the Feiyu Scorp MiniP. Now for the combo, you do get a carry case. In fact, this is a fairly big one as well, so you can fit all your gimbal because of the size. This does take up quite a bit of space. Personally, I think this might be a little bit too big for something that's only catered for a smartphone. So I want to travel compact, and I don't think I'll be carrying something like this. You also get an extension pole. This is made from carbon fiber, very light. You can put it on the bottom, just want to show you. It does give that extra extension for some creative shooting, but the main draw card is this. This is their LED tracker, as you can see, and it's plugged straight into the gimbal itself through a Type-C. Now this is through magnetic, and then the plate you need to stick manually onto your gimbal itself, and then basically it just locks on like that. Now first things first, all of these gimbal are roughly the same price from where I'm from, but obviously it will vary between the country that you're purchasing from. Now I think DJI will be the cheapest out of all of these, only by a fractional margin, maybe 10 to 15 US dollars, depending on the country and exchange rate. But if you get the combo version, this is also the smallest, but you do get the least amount of accessories. It doesn't have AI tracking, and it does have some limitations, which I'll go through, especially with this gimbal. But out of these 3, I think Zhiyun is slightly the most expensive, being the newest one, as well as the most accessories, 2 lights and an AI tracking, and the other 2 are relatively similar price. Let's go through the weight, design, material, and functionalities. What's unique about each of them? The M6 on its own, 640, and with the LED light, 684 grams. The Smooth 5S, 626 grams, plus the accessories, 671 grams. 396 grams. Finally, the Feiyu MiniP at 809 grams, the heaviest of the bunch, and let's put on the tracker, 833. Now, unfortunately, I don't speak cheeseburger, so I don't know what it is, but I'll leave the conversions on screen for you US folks. Now, in terms of material and construction, most of these are made from composite plastic, of which I think the DJI probably feels the most plasticky. It is. Now, in terms of durability, probably not as long as these guys, because I think they're a lot more rugged in construction. Now the hand grip's a little different as well. This is all kind of PU rubber or plastic, you know, fake rubber. Feiyu and the Zhiyun feels pretty good. On the M6, this is fairly smooth. Might not be a good thing, especially if it's raining and gets a little bit wet. I think it's gonna feel a little bit more slippery, whereas these 2 feels a lot more grippier. On the DJI, feels very thin. It just feels like a stick on rubber material texture. It will do the job, but it can be better. Button and knobs are very similar. We have all plastic material. And the only difference is Feiyu has its button mounted on the back here. We have these dial knobs, which are different functions on different gimbals. On the M6, it's used to control the roll as well as the focus through the app. On the Zhiyun, it's to control the focus and the zoom of the phone on the app itself. And that's the same on the DJI to control the zoom and the focus through the app itself. But I actually think this is a little bit small. Okay, I do prefer the larger knobs because it gives you a much more accurate control. I think the Feiyu is probably the best. The knob functionality is to control the roll, the tilt, as well as the pan of the gimbal itself with just one click of a button, which is actually a much more useful, I think, functionality rather than to use these to control the focus of your camera. The only limitation on the DJI is the fact this is not a true 3-axis gimbal. And what I mean by that is, let me show you. The phone only turns left and right, and as I turn, the phone will tilt. Okay, so you're not getting a horizontal, perfectly flat rotation. Not only that, if you go up and down, you're limited by its rotation, which means you're not able to do some of the complicated moves. So for example, if you're outside and you're shooting up and down like this, if I put it in lock mode, now if I go down, and it just locks, and then you have no clearance and the phone turns with the same position as your gimbal. That's a limitation on one of these bad boys. So unfortunately, to overcome this, you have two options. You can shoot it top down like this, okay, which the phone kind of spins, and then you have to move it up down like this, which is inconvenient, to be honest, right? Or you can shoot it like this, sideways, and then you can go up and down, right? Your hand has to be kind of the pivot point. So that makes it very uncomfortable. So if you want to do some professional cinematic kind of movements, you know, up and down and reveals, it's harder to do on the OM6 and it takes a little bit more extra effort. Now, one advantage I want to show you is that this does have an extension pole. You know, it's a good handy feature if you want to do some creative shooting, right? And you can probably reach other places, you know, so you don't have to be as low shooting a top-down shot. But unfortunately, this obviously takes up the battery space. So in terms of battery duration, this is not going to last compared to these guys. The third problem with the DJI is that it's designed to shoot like this. So if you're a vlogger and you want to shoot yourself like a selfie, you have to use the front-facing camera, which means most of the time it's lesser quality versus the back-facing, especially on my iPhone. Now, on most gimbals, you can 3-tap and it will spin around. But on this, it doesn't happen. So you have to shoot it this way in order for you to get that good quality selfie. It's doable, but something to keep in mind. It's an extra effort you have to do, and it does take a little bit of time. If you want to go from horizontal to vertical, it's just a double tap of a button, and it does that automatically. That's a bonus because on these guys, it's all manual. Apart from that, that's all the rant I have for the DJI. It is very small, very compact, and you can take it very conveniently to a lot of places. It is the smallest of all these gimbals. Okay, next move on to the M6. The M6 is the only one with a big enough LCD screen to show you what mode you're in, the battery, the Bluetooth, all its details, right? Whereas all these other ones are very small LED lights, basically showing you which mode you're in. It also has a unique feature of actually memorizing two different positions. So there are two buttons on the side, an A and a B. So for example, if I'm shooting at this location, right, and I want to remember this position, all I have to do is hold on to A, and then I'll go to the second position, and I'll click on B. And if I want to go back to A, all I have to do is press A, it'll go there, and press B, I'll come back to B. Now, unfortunately, the transition between A and B is still a little bit rigid, so it's not a smooth transition, so I wouldn't use it to do a creative shoot, so to say, because you are going to get some jagged footage, but it is good to memorize some certain positions that you use all the time. Now, let's put this on and show you what this does. Now, if I hold on to this, the light turns on, and I can use the knob to adjust the brightness. One thing I don't like this, it takes an infinite amount of time for me to adjust the brightness of the light. It's in basically 1% increments, and I have to constantly spin. I'm still at 60%. Now, apart from the brightness, you can change the temperature as well from 27 Kelvin, which is what it was before, to 65 Kelvin to something more cooler. You can triple tap and it will go into RGB mode, and you can adjust the hue, which is the color of the light, and of course the brightness. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, all three gimbals, excluding the DJI, have adjustable horizontal bars. Okay, so if you have a fairly heavy phone, especially horizontally, you can adjust the balance, which is important to balance your gimbal. So here we go. This is the Zhiyun Smooth 5S, so you can adjust the horizontal just like this as well. Triple tap, it will turn around and you can do selfies, and of course you can also turn on the LED light. Now what's unique about Zhiyun is, apart from the joystick, it does have a rotating dial. This has two purposes. One is through the app itself, you can adjust all the functionalities, the menus. The second purpose is to adjust the light. So if I hold on to this, bang, the light turns on. Sorry, let me turn this one around as well. So you can make it face yourself or you can face the other way. And obviously you can adjust the brightness, see, much more quickly, right, through 2 rotations rather than 600 rotations on the M6. They do come with these little accessories that you can see here. And these are magnetic, so if you want something yellow or warm, you can obviously just stick it on like that. So that's a pretty easy way to change color, but unfortunately you do have to carry these. To be honest, I don't really use these. I think having a neutral light is good enough. So how bright is it? Let's test this out. Right now this is only one light, and if I turn it to max, this is what you get. Okay, let's put the second one on. Wow, it's very bright. Let's compare that to the M6. Let's turn on the power. This is on 83%. Let's go to 100%. Okay, now we're at 100%. You can see it's a lot less bright versus the Zhiyun. Okay, just to show you, this is 100%. I don't know if you can see. Okay, 100%. And this is 1%. And you can see basically kind of useless, to be honest. Okay, let's turn on the DJI. Whoa, this is at a amber light, or a yellow warm light, but this is now level 1, level 2, and level 3. I think it's a little bit better than the M6, but nowhere near as bright as the Zhiyun Smooth 5S. You would have to be this close to be shooting a vlog to get any kind of brightness. Not very ideal. So definitely don't get this for the price, as the fact that you have to charge this separately. Just get a normal gimbal if you want something compact. All right, let's go to the Feiyu. Turns on, no problems. Let me put the tracker on. I have it mounted here, and then just plug it into, just like that. You can see it's not a coherent design, obviously more of an afterthought, but yeah, it does the job. Now, the good thing about the Feiyu, I want to tell you, is this knob. You can turn up and down, right? Press of a button, it becomes a pan, and then it rotates. This is the only gimbal that has this function. All the other ones don't. Mostly are controlling the app itself to zoom and focus. So if you want something that has this function, only the Feiyu MiniP has that. Now, one thing I don't really like, I know this is their kind of designed signature, is the Scorpion, the Scorp. So it has the Scorpion tail, and it kind of helps you leverage the weight of the camera that's on your gimbal, right? But the fact that we're using a smartphone that weighs 200 or 300 grams at most, this is kind of gets in the way, and it adds weight to the overall setup. I wish there was more I could say about this gimbal, but unfortunately at this stage, comparing just the design functions, it is the heaviest and the largest of the bunch. So yeah, not the best so far. Now before we go outside to test the AI track, I want to give you a quick idea of what this is and why you need it or not. This is using LiDAR to send signals back and forth to your subject and to make a more accurate track. However, if you don't have this, and like the DJI Osmo 6, it uses an in-app track, is calculating through contrast, through color, through shape, to really calculate different algorithm to lock onto your subject. So there are 2 different ways of tracking subjects, and having this is beneficial in 2 ways. Number 1, you're not dependent on the app itself. So if you want to use your native camera app on your iPhone, for example, or your Samsung phone, or if you want to use, like me, the Blackmagic app to shoot a more cinematic footage, you want to have one of these, because with this, you're not dependent on the app itself. And the second reason is ease of use, especially if you're by yourself. You can have a look at the LEDs, it's prompting you, it's tracking you, it does all the job, okay? Whereas through the app, because you're shooting, here, let me show you. Because you're shooting and you're standing on the other side of the camera, you can't see what you're tracking, you don't know what the screen is, right? You don't have a monitor to monitor everything that you do. So sometimes it's a bit of guesswork and it's a hit and miss. It's a lot easier with one of these, and you can stay further apart. All you have to do is use gestures and it will automatically turn on the tracking. So let's check out the AI tracking, and since DJI does not have this feature, I will not be featuring in this test. Let's find out which of these 3 gimbals with AI tracking works the best. First is the initiation of tracking. You can see here the M6 and the 5S
is able to recognize me straight away and activate tracking, whereas the Scorp MiniP takes a second try before it starts to recognize me. Now on paper, all3 tracking has lost subject recovery system. What that means, if your subject is out of tracking range, it will continue to scan and retrack once the subject re-enters the frame. So let's test this while I hide under the table. Now you can see here all3 have lost tracking as I disappear under the table. However, when I reappear within the frame, only during 5S was able to recognize and continue to track me. I had to restart the M6 with the gesture before it started tracking. And you can see here with the M6, it had issues tracking and we had to manually restart again. Now for the MiniP, well, that was the same case. We had to reinitiate tracking with a hand gesture. And it also had issues restarting, so we had to reset the whole tracking system before we can continue shooting. The next test is more of an agility test where we try to move as fast as I can within the range to see if I can lose tracking. Now you can see here as I move faster and faster, we're starting to lose track. The M6 was the first one to lose track of me, but it was able to pick me up again once I re-entered the frame, and once again losing me as I moved too fast out of frame. Now I also did the test again in 360 degrees and all3 worked well, especially if you're moving at a constant smooth pace. Okay, next we have a long distance test just to see the range of the tracking itself. This is approximately 5 meters away from the 3 different trackers. Of the 3 gimbals, the MiniP has already lost its subject. Now the next test is once again hiding behind the wall and to see if I can be re-recognized and retracked as I reappear in frame. Now at this distance, during Smooth 5S, AI was the only tracker who was able to pick me up and continue tracking. And in fact, I had to come closer to reactivate tracking before the other gimbals was able to continue to track me. As you can see, I've done this a few times and the results were the same. And the final test is a fairly simple test just to see how far they can start recognizing my gestures and continue tracking. From this test, you can see the M6 and the 5S did fairly well, whereas the Feiyu Scorp MiniP took a bit of effort and you had to be a lot closer to activate its tracking. One other interesting I found is that only the MiniP and Feiyu's 5S was able to start recording and stop recording with a different hand gesture. The Hohem M6 does not have this feature, so you would need to manually start recording on your phone. Now because DJI does not have AI tracking and only software tracking, let's go to the app and see how well it performs. Now in fact, I do think the tracking in the app is fairly well. In fact, it has facial recognition, so it will automatically lock onto your subject's face and follow it around. The only concern is if you zoom in a little bit, you can see that there's a little bit of delay, so your subject tends to be out of frame. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, at certain extreme conditions, whether that be too close to the frame or too far from the frame, you are going to lose your subject. Now it does automatically tracks you once you're back into frame, but there are errors and it doesn't work all the time. Now if you look at Zhiyun's 5S AI's in-app track, it actually does a fairly good job, especially in a scene with multiple subjects. You can see here that I'm tracking this child and it has no problem following and tracking as I move around in this scene. It at no time lost its subject and it was able to follow and recognize the kid even though there were multiple subjects. Now I did the same test with Feiyu's MiniP. Now it was able to follow the subject fairly well before it got off the bike. So this could be a recognition issue or an algorithm issue. Sometimes it does happen, so that kind of makes and breaks an in-app track and something to consider. Now I did the same test with the Hohem M6 as well. You can see here I'm following the subject as I move around in this scene. Now overall it actually performed fairly well, similar to the Zhiyun. However, at the very last second where there was a subject, maybe because it was similar in size or color or contrast, and we were able to lose the track and started following someone else. So that was a little bit unfortunate.
Finally, let's check out the stability test.
This is the M6 first up. And you can see here, very smooth. I'm using the native camera app and there's no post stabilization. Even running down the stairs coming back towards the camera, overall fairly stabilized. Next is Zhiyun Smooth 5S AI. Similar results, I think. Very smooth walking, especially going up the stairs. There is a little bit of jittery as you're running down the stairs, but this is apparent with all 4 gimbals. Then we had the Feiyu Scorp MiniP doing the same test. To be honest, I think Feiyu actually did pretty well as I was coming down the stairs. Not that much of an up and down bounce, but I think they all did pretty good. And finally is the DJI Osmo 6. Smooth as you're going forward up the stairs. I think all 4 performed fairly well. Now the next test is an interesting one where we try to do a pan follow rotation. Now I did this test in the native camera with 3x zoom just to enlarge any vibrations we can see. Now there will be some movements in the camera because this obviously is all done manually, but what we want to try to find is are there any jittery, any shakes, or if the footage is smooth throughout the transition. Now next is the Scorp MiniP. Now during the shot I did not realize this, but however during my replay in the computer, what I found was there are a relatively shake at certain moments throughout the rotation. Now I don't know if you can see this, it's going to happen in 3, 2, 1. Similarly, I did the same test with the M6, native camera, 3x zoom, and like the MiniP, there were a strange vibration as I was spinning the gimbal. It's going to happen in 3, 2, 1. In fact, it happened twice. And finally is the DJI Osmo 6. I think the Osmo 6 and the Zhiyun performed the best with the rotation, no visible vibrations, and it was a fairly smooth transition going forward and coming back as well.
After all the review, what do you think? Well, here are my conclusions and my recommendations. If you already own a mobile gimbal or if you own a similar gimbal to any of these, I don't think there's a need to upgrade because what we have right now in terms of stabilization technology, I think we're at a stage where we're very mature, right? We are pretty much at the pinnacle of stabilization. The only thing we're missing is the up and down axis, which is not available in any of these gimbals, so I don't think it's worth upgrading. However, if you don't have a gimbal and you're looking for that perfect gimbal, there are 2 types of gimbals here. There's the compact everyday gimbal for travel, for ease of convenience, plug and play, okay? The DJI Osmo is something I recommend. And in fact, actually, I just remembered. This is the Zhiyun Smooth Q3, and it's very similar. You can probably get this and get away with a smooth shot as well. The only reason I didn't feature that in here because I already have a Zhiyun product and the AI tracking is not as good as the DJI. Now, if you want something more professional, if you want to actually get into cinematography, learn about filming, composition, movements, camera movements, things like that, then you need something like these, okay? And my recommendation is probably the Zhiyun. Or if you think your budget doesn't stretch that enough, go for the M6. Zhiyun kind of has all the benefits of all these combined, given it's also the lightest of the bunch and it's modular. So the LED lights itself are actually worth getting because they actually work, whereas these ones, I think it's more of a gimmick. The AI tracking, this is a bonus because it's being new, the algorithm, the tracking functionalities, I think it's worth spending that extra $1 to get something like this. And then the M6, well, if you find a good deal, I don't have a problem you buying this over the Zhiyun. It is still a very good gimbal. Don't get the one with the lights, it's just kind of useless, but the AI tracking is good. But definitely don't get it for the LED lights. But everything else, I think this is a very solid gimbal as well. Now, hopefully that was insightful. There are still a lot more mini details and things like that. This will go on forever. So any questions, leave it in the comments or just DM me on Instagram because I'm there all the time, where on YouTube I'm a little bit slower in replying. But yeah, I'll leave a link to everything in the details descriptions. Thank you for staying to the end and feel free to give a like. I appreciate that, and I'll see you in the next unbiased review.